you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction. Welcome, everybody. It's an honor and a pleasure to be speaking at Republica again. Sorry again for the design doesn't get any better. I hope you can see it anyways. Before I'm going to start talking to you about the digitization of the pilgrimage to Mecca, there are two things that I want to get out of the way first. So one, I want to warn you that later in the presentation, there's one slide coming up that comes with a trigger warning because it contains a picture of dead bodies. But I'm going to give you a fair warning just right before the slide again. And also at the very end of the presentation, I'm going to talk about the slaughtering of animals, if that disturbs anybody. Then, secondly, I have to admit that although I have lived for 2 years in Jeddah, which you can see here on the map by the Red Sea, in very close proximity to the holy city of Mecca, it's a car ride of about 2 hours, I myself have never been to Mecca in these 2 years, and this is why. Non-Muslims are not allowed to enter the holiest city in Islam. The other two holy cities, by the way, are Medina, which you see here north of Mecca, and Jerusalem. And these are the signs that you see on the highway when you are driving up to Mecca. And when I was in Saudi Arabia, I had a few friends and colleagues who had actually sneaked into Mecca, although they were non-Muslim, and they had offered me to come with them. And I was slightly tempted for a while, but then I decided that I did not want to be the cause of some diplomatic crisis. And then I chickened out, and I never went to Mecca. The pilgrimage to Mecca, or Hajj, as it is called in Arabic, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Maybe some of you have already heard about this. It means that every Muslim who is capable physically and financially has to perform Hajj and go to Mecca at least once during their lifetime. And it has to be during the holy month of Hajj. The month of Hajj is the 12th month in the Muslim calendar. And the Muslim calendar is a lunar calendar, and that means that it is actually shorter than the Christian year. And it means that the dates of holidays like Ramadan or Hajj are moving from one year to the next. So for example, this year, Hajj will be from the 19th of August until the 24th of August. But last year, it started on the 30th of August, and the year before, it started on the 10th of September. So the dates progressively start earlier every year. And this is important to keep in the back of your head because it means that at the moment and also for a couple of years to come, the Hajj will always be in summer during the hottest time of the year. The rituals of Hajj are performed for 4 specific days during the month of Hajj. But there's also something that is called the smaller pilgrimage or the lesser pilgrimage, and the name for that is Umrah. And Umrah is when you go to Mecca during any other time during the year. And you also perform certain rituals, but it only counts as Hajj when you go during the holy month of Hajj. And this is why you have so many people during the month of Hajj in Mecca at the same time, because they all try to hit that very specific time frame to get all the karma points. During the 4 days of Hajj, the pilgrims first put on their special Hajj attire. It is all white to demonstrate that the pilgrims are humble before God and that they are all the same before God. It's all white. As you can see, men are wearing, actually it's towels, it's really towels, 2 white towels, and the women also wear white. And then the pilgrims perform certain rituals in and around Mecca, and I'm going to explain these a little bit. So they start in Mecca here. And one of the rituals that they perform is that they circulate, they walk counterclockwise around the Kaaba for 7 times. And also in Mecca, they run 7 times between the 2 hills of Safa and Marwa, and they drink from the holy Zamzam water, from a holy well that is in Mecca. And then they travel from Mecca to Mount Arafat, which is down here, and they stand vigil there. And then they go from here to Muzdalifah, and they also pray and perform certain rituals, and they pick up pebbles, little stones. And then they go from Muzdalifah to Mina, and in Mina they perform the ritual stoning of the devil here on the Jamarat Bridge. It's like a ritual. They throw the stones that they have collected in Muzdalifah, and they throw the stones on some pillars, and that is the ritual of ritually stoning the devil. That's what they say. And after that, at the very end of the Hajj, they slaughter some animals to commemorate the story of Abraham and Ishmael for the holiday of Eid al-Adha. So as you can see, the things up here, the bridge, the Jamarat Bridge, where they perform the ritual stoning of the devil, and Mina, where you have all these little tents, and the slaughterhouses, all these things are in very close proximity to each other, and there's not a lot of space here. And you have to keep this area in mind, because this is going to be a problem that I'm going to talk about later, that there's not a lot of space. The city of Mecca and the Kaaba that we saw here, they were destinations of pilgrimage and worship even long before the times of the Prophet Muhammad and before the beginnings of Islam as a religion. And Muslims believe that Mecca already became a place of worship during the biblical times of Abraham. On this graph, you see the number of foreign pilgrims coming to Mecca from other countries outside of Saudi Arabia. The graph starts in the 1920s. And as you can see, the numbers have increased steadily, especially in the 1960s, when air travel became affordable for more people. And together with domestic pilgrims, the total number of pilgrims reached an all-time high in the year of 2012, which you can see here. Altogether in 2012, there were over 3 million pilgrims in Mecca at the same time. And because that's like more than 1 million people too many, since 2013, Saudi authorities have made an effort to cap the numbers, the total number of pilgrims, domestic and foreign, at 2 million people. Because it's very hard to scale the logistics and the organization for more than 2 million people. And they regulate this by, for example, restricting the number of Hajj visas that the Saudis are giving out to other countries. And here you have an overview, a rough overview of some of the countries that are sending pilgrims to go to Mecca, to Saudi Arabia. You see that the countries that are making up the biggest part are Indonesia, with more than 200,000 pilgrims in 2017. And the runner-ups are Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and Egypt. And then you have Iran, Turkey, Nigeria, Algeria, and Morocco. A friend of mine actually asked me today, but where are all the pilgrims from Germany? Of course, there are pilgrims from Germany going to Mecca, but they are nowhere close this table, because there are not so many coming. Now, the sheer amount of people congregating in Mecca every Hajj season poses an extreme challenge for the Saudi authorities, because they have to provide logistics, infrastructure, and especially safety for all the pilgrims from all over the world. This entails, for example, issuing visas to the pilgrims. They have to ensure transportation and accommodation and such, because most of the pilgrims arrive by air in Medina or in Jeddah, and then they need transport to go to Mecca, and they need hotels where they can stay, and so forth and so on. And this is a huge challenge because, as I said, you have 2 million people coming from over 180 countries from all over the world, and many of the pilgrims are elderly or illiterate. Because this is such a huge challenge, Saudi Arabia has its own ministry for that. It's the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah. This is a screenshot from the website of the ministry. Here you see the name, Ministry of Hajj and Umrah. And while they certainly work to improve the overall organization from year to year, there are still a lot of accidents and problems happening every year. And now we are going to have a look at some of the recurring problems that we face every year. Incidents and accidents during Hajj season have their own Wikipedia page, and it's very long, and here are just some examples. It's a screenshot from the Wikipedia page. Here we just have the categories fires, protests, and airplane crashes. And it is notable that whenever there are accidents during Hajj with casualties, the number of casualties is usually very high. So have a look at some of the examples. For example, here in December 1975, an accident with 200 dead pilgrims. Then we have here in 1987, it led to the death of more than 400 pilgrims. So as you can see, whenever something happens, you often have a lot of dead people, dead bodies piling up. Then we have a category only dedicated to construction failures when, for example, buildings collapse. And one of the more recent accidents was when a huge crane crashed into the Grand Mosque in Mecca. That was in 2015. And this caused the death of 180 people, as you can see here. And this is a picture of the crane that crashed into the mosque. And apart from accidents that happen, people a lot of people actually regularly die during Hajj because a lot of them, as I said, are very old because they save up money all of their life to be able to go on Hajj at the very end of their life when they have saved enough money. And a lot of people just die during Hajj because of exhaustion, heat strokes, or diseases, or just because they are old. But even when you come young and healthy to Hajj and to Mecca, you may leave sick. Because healthcare is another big recurring problem. When I was living in Saudi Arabia during the month of Hajj, everybody would get the Hajj flu. It doesn't even matter if you went to Mecca or not, everybody would just get sick during this month because all the infections would make the rounds. And while this certainly sucks for the infected, it makes for some wonderful research about infectious diseases, as you can see from the multitude of research papers that are published on the questions of infections and infectious diseases, because it's very interesting to study this. You have many people from all over the world, they come to Mecca, they exchange all their infections. It's very interesting to study, apparently. One of the main healthcare issues was the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus. There was a big problem for a couple of years. It was first noticed to be transmitted in 2012, and it claimed many lives, most of them in Saudi Arabia. The virus also originated in Saudi Arabia, and it seems that a lot of people who got the infection, where the disease was discovered in other countries, that they got their infection from a trip to Saudi Arabia. Another problem is that people get lost in and around Mecca, obviously, especially children. According to this magazine that is published by the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah, hundreds of children get lost and found every Hajj season, and the problem is that many of them are too small to tell the volunteers their names or in which language they have to search for the parents or where they are from. So the problem of identifying people or children who are lost is a big problem. Another problem, another big recurring problem, are mass stampedes. They occur due to space constraints. People are panicking or they are pushing through bottlenecks that are just way too tight or too small for such huge crowds. And on this slide, that is also a screenshot from the Wikipedia page about stampedes during Hajj, there are two things that I want you to note on this compilation of stampedes. One, as I mentioned earlier, whenever there are casualties, there are usually a lot of casualties. Have a look again, for example, here in 1990, a stampede with almost 1,500 dead pilgrims. Stampede in 1994, 270 pilgrims are killed. 1998, 180 pilgrims. That's like all the smaller numbers. If you have like only 100 people killed, it's the smaller numbers. 2004, 251 pilgrims were killed due to stampedes. So you see, it's a very big recurring problem. It just happens all the time, almost every year or every couple of years. And two, what you can also note on this slide is that most of the stampedes are happening on the Jamarat Bridge or around the Jamarat Bridge, where the ritual stoning of the devil is performed, or in and around Mina. And you remember before when I showed you the map that it's a very tight area, so most of the stampedes are happening there when 2 million people are trying to move around this very tight spot. So this means that despite all the efforts of the Saudi authorities, this area of Jamarat Bridge and Mina is still to this day one of the most dangerous spaces during the whole pilgrimage. And now we have that slide that comes with a trigger warning. You be warned, next slide has dead people on it. The last main stampede happened in 2015 in Mina. On the way up the Jamarat Bridge, people were trying to walk up the Jamarat Bridge, and this stampede in 2015 had an estimated number of 2,000 casualties. Saudi authorities only admitted to a much smaller number of around 700 casualties. Some people say it was almost 4,000. Most people nowadays go with around 2,000 casualties, but that's an awful lot of dead people, I would say. And it says a lot that authorities were just not able to give precise numbers of the dead, and that they were also not able to identify all of the dead people. So the question of identification of dead people is also going to be an important subject for later to keep in mind. So to handle all these issues, the Saudi authorities have tried to improve the organization of the Hajj from year to year. Now is the end of the trigger warning. Whoever was looking away can now look again. Crowd control is a science in and of itself, which is why there are plenty of research papers published on the issue, as you can see here. Authorities now use live crowd analytics software to predict and control crowd movement. They have live data feeds that come into large operation rooms where they are analyzed by military personnel and police and other crowd managers. And the software provides accurate and real-time data on crowd numbers, densities, distributions, and flows. And this at least slightly eases the tension in tight spots like the Jamarat Bridge, where the flow of pilgrims is nowadays directed in a series of one-way routes. And here you see a picture of the Jamarat Bridge. The Jamarat Bridge nowadays it was expanded multiple times, and today it has 5 levels and 12 entrances and 12 exits and 2 helicopter pads. And you have to imagine you see these roofs here. So in the middle of these roofs are the pillars where the pilgrims are throwing their stones, their pebbles, and they can do this on multiple levels. So they can walk up on different levels to stone these pillars, and they walk up here in a one-direction route, move through here, and then they leave again in another one-direction route. As you can see here on the picture, here you see how the flow of people is directed up and down on the Jamarat Bridge. There is another example of expansion projects. They have expanded the Grand Mosque in Mecca multiple times, so it can now fit almost 1 million worshippers at once. It is already now the biggest mosque in the world, and they still keep expanding it. You can see it here on the picture. The Kaaba is that very small spot there on the right, and here you see all the cranes around the mosque that are expanding it. It's like a huge construction site. And when they are done expanding it, it will eventually have space for 2.5 million worshippers. There are also plenty of CCTV cameras monitoring the holy sites. In the Grand Mosque that you see here in the pictures alone, there are 1,000 surveillance cameras in and around the Grand Mosque. And now there are 3 special technical solutions that I want to focus on, that I want to introduce to you. The first is the app Manasikana. It was developed by the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah. It is available in 7 languages, in Arabic, French, English, Urdu, Malay, Turkish, and Bengali. And the most important feature is to serve orientation for the pilgrims in and around Mecca, so that they can find their friends when they have lost them, or they can find restaurants, restrooms, mosques, and just in general find their way around. But the app also provides news services, translation services, emergency services, a prayer schedule, and a compass for the correct direction of prayer, because you have to imagine all the people who come from different countries. Usually they would turn in the direction of Mecca to pray, but in which direction do you pray when you are inside of Mecca, right? Not sure, I haven't used it yet. I would imagine so, yeah. And I can imagine that this app is super helpful for people who are maybe not only for the first time in Mecca, but also for the first time outside of their home country. Maybe they don't even speak Arabic, so I think that's a huge improvement for people. And you can download the app either in the Google Play Store or the iPhone Store, or you can also actually download it on the website of the Ministry for Hajj and Umrah. Now I have a very short video for you, and I hope that we have the sound and it will work.
Muslims who flock to the holy city of Mecca yearly
We're supposed to have sound.
wearing electronic identification bracelets for protection.
Wasn't me.
Personal and medical information will be stored in the E-Bracelets, which will be water resistant and GPS.
Okay, maybe we start again and try that thing with the sound, because it's supposed to have sound now.
Muslims who flock to the holy city of Mecca yearly may soon be wearing electronic identification bracelets for protection.
Stage manager, sound. Anybody providing sound here? Told you guys that I was needing sound before, and we had some, but then it was too much. It's supposed to have sound there.
Personal and medical information will be stored in the E-Bracelet.
All right. Sorry, keep that question in mind.
Muslims who flock to the holy city of Mecca yearly may soon be wearing electronic identification bracelets for protection. Personal and medical information will be stored in the E-Bracelets, which will be water-resistant and GPS-enabled. The bracelet will notify worshippers of prayer times and use a compass to indicate which direction to face. A guide to pilgrimage steps and rituals will also be included, as well as language support for non-Arabic speakers.
All right, that was the first of 2 short video clips. So last year, these e-bracelets became mandatory for pilgrims, and their main purpose is to identify pilgrims. But, as we can see in the second video, the concept is great, but they are not quite there yet.
ارفع ايدك لفوق لفوق لفوق.
الاسوار التعريفيه هذه بسيطه جدا، رخيصه الثمن، يعني سعرها لا يتجاوز ريال ونص تقريبا او ريالين. خفيفه، انتي بكتيريال، انتي ووتر، انتي فاير، وخفيفه الوزن، وبالتالي الحاج لا تضايق في لبسها او في الوضوء او في الصلاه او في الاستحمام. هذه الاسواره تحتوي على عدد من المعلومات التي يمكن قراءتها مباشره، ولكنها تتميز بوجود باركود معين، رقم معين يمكن من قراءته استدعاء مزيد من البيانات من قواعد بيانات الحجاج في وزارة الحج.
واحد لا سمح الله بموت، بيعرفوا منه، بيتصلوا بالشركة انه هون في واحد ضايع، واحد ميت، واحد مريض، بيقدرش يحكي. هذا هو عبارة عن هذا الشيء، يعني هذا الدليل، الهوية.
Ça protège, ou du moins ça donne une identité du pèlerin, ça permettra de pouvoir l'identifier facilement quand il y a effectivement des problèmes, on ne le souhaite pas. Mais quand ça va venir, en tout cas donc je crois le gouvernement saoudien a pris des dispositions afin de pouvoir sécuriser les gens.
All right. So as you can see, it seems to me that they are still working on the hardware and the software, because in this video clip you saw that the pilgrims are still using some kind of alpha version. It just looks like a festival bracelet, basically, with a QR code that can be scanned. And although I can see why pilgrims and authorities find the bracelet super useful, I have some data privacy concerns. First of all, this is an awful lot of personal data that is stored on the bracelets, and we all know that wherever there is personal data, there's also the misuse of data. And secondly, the bracelet reader app with which you can scan the bracelet and the QR code is very easy to download. You can either download it directly on the website of the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah here, or in your Google Play Store or in the iPhone's App Store. So I can imagine all kinds of crimes connected to this easy access to the personal data, when people have an easy way of knowing when you are absent from your hotel room, maybe, if they want to rob you or your hotel room, or you could also fall victim to identity theft, for example. And this example, the last example of the digitization of the pilgrimage, is the electronic sacrifice of an animal that is done at the end of the Hajj rituals for the holiday of Eid al-Adha. Because nowadays there are so many pilgrims, not all of them can perform the sacrifice on site, because it's also located in the very tight spot of the Jamarat Bridge and Mina. Although there are still slaughterhouses that are running in close proximity to Mina. And what you can do nowadays is you go on this website of the Islamic Development Bank or to a Saudi post office, you purchase an animal online, and then the animal is slaughtered on your behalf. And I just tried this out here. You can see it's the website, it's a screen grab of the website of the Islamic Development Bank. And I checked that I want to do a fidya sacrifice, and I checked that I want to slaughter a sheep. We can also choose cows and camels, but I chose a sheep, and then it tells me that this will cost me 450 Saudi riyal, which is around 100 euros. Then I agree to the terms and conditions. Next, and the animal is slaughtered on my behalf. And then the meat is distributed among the poor on my behalf. And it is certainly much more hygienic to do it like this than to slaughter 2 million animals in one spot. But if it were up to me, the slaughter of animals would be just symbolic altogether. And finally, I want to raise the question, how much digitization is too much digitization? I have already mentioned my concerns about data privacy in regard to the e-bracelets. But in regard to the Manasikana app and the electronic slaughtering of animals, You could also ask if some of the spirit, the religious spirit, is lost when so much technology is used during the performing of the holy rites. Like maybe you should put down your smartphone for once and just engulf yourself in this once-in-a-lifetime experience. But I would argue that especially younger people have their smartphones with them anyways, because the smartphone and everything digital is part of their everyday life, and they have their smartphone with them when they go on pilgrimage as well. For just one example, people are taking selfies of themselves all the time when they're doing Hajj. This is a man taking a selfie of himself while he is performing the ritual stoning of the devil on Jamarat Bridge. But all this happy selfie taking came to an end because the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah now has banned. Starting this year, selfies are banned from the holy mosques because apparently it disturbed other pilgrims. It got out of hand and it caused anger, confusion, and also traffic problems. So I would say this is some kind of contradiction because on one hand the ministry is banning selfies from the mosques to preserve the ritual and spiritual atmosphere, but at the same time they encourage you to use their special apps that they have developed for the Hajj. And there are probably also always people who want to cherish the moment and they just keep their smartphone in their pocket and they don't want technology to be involved when they are having this once-in-a-lifetime experience. And in conclusion, we can say that modern technology helped to solve many of the long-standing logistical problems of Hajj and organizing the Hajj, but there is still some room for improvement, especially when it comes to data reduction and preserving the spiritual experience and the religious atmosphere. And with that, I want to leave you. Thank you very much for your attention. I don't know if we still have some time for questions. If we have, feel free to ask. If not, find me after the talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miriam. We actually have 2 more minutes for a question, and there is actually the first one.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. The first thing is not really a question. Maybe I missed it, but I think it's also important to know that, like, when you go to Hajj, you have to give up your passport and your ID. Like, as far to my knowledge, you don't really. I mean, that's maybe a reason why they need the identification.
Is that a question or a statement?
As far as I know, like my aunt told me, like she had to do it. Like you give up your passport and then you get the visa for Saudi. And
that's not how I heard it, but maybe there are some parts confused because of course you have to send in your passport in order to get the visa, but then you get the passport back with the visa and then you take the passport with the visa with you when you go on your travels. Usually you would have your passport on you, on your person, but there are these tour operators who are organizing the Hajj, and maybe some of the operators just keep all the passports of the people in their group for them, to keep them for them. So if somebody is trampled to death somewhere, maybe this person has not the passport on them because the tour operator has it. But then they have no way of identifying the person and notifying the tour operator. So.
And the other question is, like the app and it's developed by the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm very sorry actually because we really have to finish on time and it's already 5.
All right.
So. Maybe you can do a follow-up afterwards.
For sure, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, applause for Miriam.